IFSA, with postgraduate studies in forestry, with an undergraduate degree in agriculture, and she wants to work on habitat and land conservation with the help of indigenous and community practices. Isha, can you just say who you are? Thank you. And then we have Aureli, or Aurelia, depending, Bres, who is an agronomist and works as a land and water officer for FAO. And over the past 15 years, she has specialized on land tenure and sustainable land management and has worked with and lived in several countries of Latin America and the Caribbean, Africa, and Asian regions. Aurelie, can you say thank you? And Dahaktugbi Asiaka, that's very Latin today, is the president of the Association Welfare, an organization that is implementing capacity building projects in rural communities, and the director of EcoScience TV. She's a former UNCCD CSO panel member and has been active in promoting land tenure rights within the convention. So let's give them a round of applause to our panelists. So for our opening remarks, thank you, Chair of the UNCCD African Regional Annex, Dr. Shalik Cherki. So I'll give you 2 minutes, Doctor, to organize yourself for your opening statement. It's difficult to find the place. It is like far, far away. So we're ready for you, Dr. Cherki, when you are ready.
Thank you very much. I will speak in French, but at the end, I will make a brief summary in English. Bonsoir à toutes et à tous. Je suis Khalid Cherki, point focal de la Convention au Maroc et président du groupe africain des négociateurs. Je suis très honoré donc d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui pour cet événement très important et je tiens à remercier infiniment le Bureau des Nations Unies pour les droits des hommes d'avoir organisé cet événement et de m'avoir invité pour cette cérémonie d'ouverture. Donc, comme vous le savez, la COP 15, il se tient à un moment charnier qui appelle à plus d'engagement, un moment charnier marqué essentiellement par le constat relevé par l'ensemble des rapports qui ont été publiés, notamment si on revient en conclusion du Forum politique de haut niveau sur le développement durable, on trouve que ne sont pas encore sur la trajectoire pour atteindre les objectifs de développement durable, les 17 objectifs de développement durable, y compris l'élimination de la pauvreté. L'élimination de la pauvreté, elle est hors portée. Également, la lutte contre la faim vraiment se heurte à plusieurs difficultés. Aussi, donc, par rapport aux sources hydriques qui se raréfient davantage, la biodiversité, il s'appauvrit, le climat, il continue à changer, notamment les gaz à effet de serre continuent à augmenter. Tout cela pour vous dire que vraiment le contexte actuel, il est grevé de contraintes et qui impacte par conséquent les droits de l'homme, l'accès à l'eau, l'élimination de la pauvreté et également le fait de vivre dans un environnement durable et en équilibre avec le système écologique. En tant que groupe régional africain, nous voulons à ce que cette COP puisse constituer un point d'inflexion et sert de catalyseur à la construction de l'avenir que nous voulons ou bien l'avenir que nous avons le droit de léguer aux générations futures. C'est pour cela les questions qui sont à l'ordre du jour qui concernent à la fois la sécheresse, la neutralité de dégradation des terres et les moyens de financement, qui constituent les points principaux de discussion de cette conférence des parties. Notre groupe, il plaide pour que ces thématiques soient pleinement traitées. En termes de sécheresse, le groupe africain, il plaide pour un accord, pour un instrument qui va permettre de donner le positionnement adéquat à cette question. Parce que, comme vous le savez tous, la sécheresse, selon les derniers rapports du Bureau des Nations Unies pour les risques et catastrophes, ce phénomène-là continue à prendre de l'ampleur que ce soit en termes de fréquence, en termes d'intensité, en termes d'impact, mais également en termes d'étendue spatiale. Nous avons commencé à constater que plusieurs pays qui ne connaissaient pas cette problématique ont commencé d'ores et déjà à en ressentir les effets. Et par conséquent, la question devrait être érigée en priorité stratégique et traitée convenablement en ciblant les 4 piliers, à savoir le pilier institutionnel, gouvernance, finance et recherche-développement. Concernant aussi les financements, plusieurs initiatives ont été mises en place et on a franchi la phase conceptuelle. Ça veut dire qu'on voudrait que le cliché soit converti en image et tous les plans qui ont été construits devraient être convertis en actions savamment dosées sur le terrain afin d'induire les impacts escomptés. Donc c'est juste pour vous dire, et également par rapport aux aspects qui touchent le genre, les régimes fonciers, par rapport au genre, la Convention s'est dotée d'un plan d'action genre. Il y avait le lancement du Gender Caucus de haut niveau, donc dernièrement, c'est une étape très très importante. Mais pour passer à l'action, le groupe africain, il est d'avis que le secrétariat de la Convention, en partenariat avec en collaboration avec les partenaires au développement, devrait appuyer les pays à décliner cette stratégie genre au niveau national en se basant sur un diagnostic, une analyse genre au niveau national, local, pour pouvoir prendre les mesures qui se doivent et passer surtout à l'action. Concernant les régimes fonciers, ils constituent un point très fondamental en termes de sécurisation et également en termes d'accès. Si on prend cette question du côté neutralité dégradation des terres et l'implication du secteur privé pour la mise en œuvre de projets qui vont valoriser la terre et la conserver, un terrain qui n'est pas assigné, un terrain qui n'est pas géré de façon moderne, vraiment, il n'est pas attirant pour le secteur privé. Donc, les pays qui le souhaitent, s'agissant d'une question sensible, et elle est prioritaire, mais elle est aussi sensible, notre position, c'est que le secrétariat, avec l'appui des partenaires au développement, sont cordialement invités à soutenir les pays qui le souhaitent pour élaborer des stratégies foncières, avec un appui pointu, centré sur les dossiers cadastraux, également sur la modernisation de la gestion foncière. Donc voilà, juste pour établir le topo, également de montrer cette interconnexion entre les droits humains et également la restauration des terres. Parce que les rapports qui ont été publiés ont montré que la restauration des terres présente ou bien offre un rapport co-bénéfice très avantageux pour la réalisation d'un nombre important des objectifs de développement durable. Donc, je veux me tenir là et je vous remercie infiniment pour votre invitation. Et je dois vous dire aussi que je suis très honoré d'être parmi vous. Et merci infiniment. Si vous le permettez, in English, my English is not so good, but I will struggle to share something. Just, I want to highlight that this conference is taking place in a very critical moment, marked notably by the last data that we have, which are showing that we are not on the track to reach the SDGs. The poverty is growing, and also biodiversity is declining. Greenhouse gas are also are following upward trend, and it's urgent to act. And as African region, we want that this conference constitute a catalyst to the building of the program and to building of a future that we have the duty to give to future generation. For our region, we have a common position regarding 3 main issues. The first one is droughts, land degradation neutrality, and financing. Droughts is being more and more devastating and gaining in terms of spatial extent, intensity, and it should be really tackled in a very adequate manner. Regarding financing, we need also to set up a clear roadmap to mobilize funds, because there are many and several initiatives and programs launched within the framework of the Secretariat, but otherwise we stop at the conceptual stage due to the lack of funds. So we should go straight to the purpose and to set up a roadmap for fund mobilization, including national funds from governments and also international cooperation, private. This requires really a clear roadmap and strategy to do it. Regarding also land tenure, it's a very sensitive and important issue, because we are having this view to involve the private sector to invest in the land restoration, but we should, before, clean the situation, the state in terms of land tenure. So we are requesting the Secretariat, in collaboration with the partners of development, to support country who want to do so, to establish a real strategy for land tenure and to modernize this issue. Also, regarding gender, it's also a very critical issue. The Secretariat has developed a gender action plan, which has been endorsed during the previous COP, and also to induce the impact, the concrete impact on the field. This action plan should be really declined. We should support countries to establish their action plan and support them to implement it. That's all. So sorry for being so long. Thank you very much again. I'm very honored to be here with you, and I want just to show the connection between land restoration and human rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cherki, as chair of the UNCCD African Regional Annex. So now we go to our distinguished panelists. And Stephanie, we're going to start with you. So Stephanie, how does the certification, land degradation and drought affects the enjoyment of human rights?
Thank you. And first of all, it's a pleasure to be here with all of you, and it's a pleasure to see so many bright faces and a certain gender balance, which is just about secured. Thank you for having joined us. So I find this question very interesting, because it's one of asking yourself which comes first. Should we look at the human rights, or should we look at the issue of land degradation, desertification, and drought? Allow me to say DLDD is going to be just way faster. I'm going to bounce back onto the first statement made by our African representative here, which is to say, of course, that we are in a very complex situation currently. We are facing this triple crisis of the climate change, the COVID recovery, the loss of agro-biodiversity, which of course is adding an impressive burden on the governments, the people, the environment, to secure, as we call these basic rights, for safe water, for food security, for also freedom of movement. The victims of these trends, of these increasing DLDD challenges, are often the same ones which have the weakest human rights being safeguarded or protected. Namely, and in our context, of course, we're talking about the rural peasants, about women, about minorities, about youth. I'm happy to have a few here also to be able to then share the points of views. And the exclusion from political discourse and from decision making, especially of women and peasants, make them even more vulnerable to the violation of these rights and their integrity. We find ourselves with additional conflicting claims, of course, for access and user rights to these different productive assets, be it water, be it land, be it seeds, between the different stakeholders. And here we can look at the example of the farmers and the pastoralists, or the smallholders and the agribusinesses. So I won't go much further into that topic, which I think has been mentioned and considered quite profusively today and in the coming and past weeks. On the other hand, what I think is of crucial interest for us here is to recognize that the safeguard and guarantee of these human rights are a ground basis to be able to tackle these issues of DLDD, and the crisis that we are experiencing. So in specifically, of course, in the context we are looking at here, the vulnerable people, be they women or men, require to have the access and control of their assets. Therefore, they must be allowed to participate in the decisions concerning the use of natural resources and the policies to move towards sustainable food systems. We just had a panel earlier on the requirement for these food systems transformation and how crucial it is to have a multi-stakeholder approach and mechanisms to make sure all the voices are heard. This is one of the human rights we want to enforce. Human right to be heard, freedom of speech, and to be considered. So the translation of these peasants' rights into national laws is unfortunately either lacking or the implementation of them are too weak to guarantee their security. So in many cases, we find ourselves with this double challenge of the rights bearers, the rights holders, apologies, they're not aware of the rights which they can claim, or they're unable to have their voices heard. On the other hand, the duty bearers often lack the knowledge of these human rights they have to guarantee, or do not understand the situation or the claim of these rights holders. So it's this importance of recognition of the mutual responsibilities between the two sides in the consideration of these human rights. And so Switzerland, in this recognition, has been supporting the protection, respect, and fulfillment of the right to food and the related rights, to seed, to land, to nutrition also, which is perhaps a much more, let's say, recent consideration, via specific projects which tackle these two aspects of awareness raising, capacity building between these two different sets of stakeholders in the human rights guaranteeing and bringing it into the global and national discourse. But we have also been supporting the Special Rapporteur on the right to food. I won't go too much into the next topic since I think you'll be covering it, but just to highlight that the Decision 20 of the COP14 has been moving in the same direction, recognizing the inseparable issue of land tenure as a precondition to address the DLDD challenges effectively and sustainably. I will let you maybe say the rest and leave it at there for now.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Stephanie, for an incredible intervention. And then you're passing the baton to Isha. And Isha is going to talk from the point of view of the youth, and especially what does it means, these and how it affects the human rights, but on the youth. So Isha, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. It's great to be in the panel, and it's wonderful to hear how we are working on the process of advancing the human rights for the desertification and land degradation. So as a youth, what we are thinking, because youth is a very large amount of population in the whole world, so it's important to secure our rights, and human-based right is something that is helping to give the focus on the youth people so that in the future they can also have the optimum right to the land so that they can have their process and innovation and everything in their own way. So in the point of how to advance, I would be very brief about it. We know that the land right or human-based right is very different for every country, though there are different things internationally or globally, but depending on the status of the country, because I am from a developing country, India, and I know that a lot of people are dependent on the land or forest or agriculture, so it depends on every country. So it is necessary to have national law to keep the local ecosystem so that they can secure their rights, belief, and institution and the practices. And especially as a youth, I would say it's not just a generation, but it also includes the indigenous people, the marginal people, and the rural people. And they are affected more than anyone. And so it's important to take care of the belief when we are advancing the human right-based approach. And second, it's important to facilitate the concrete innovation in a legal terms where local tenure and right or investment can be secured in a proper way to help them in business or any LA to acquire the vast land areas. And if I would like to say that how are youth people, or how we can include the youth people in the whole process, first we know as a young that what we want and how we can help our future generation. So we should have the rights or the process on the land right to utilize the opportunity to make the change and have our new perception and perspective in different approaches. And the second was, obviously I have already told, the law is different, and we know that which kind of change is important and how we can help our future generation. So like the government or the organization should hear how our perspective, how innovative we are giving the ideas about. And yeah, last but not the least, as a youth, I would like to say that we are facing problem to sustain financially and sometimes technically in the developing country like Africa or South Asia. So we don't have enough financial support or technical support, or not all the youth people are enough sustainable to help them in education or any kind of skills. So it's important to give them enough support financially and technically so that they can raise their voice or help with their voice in different human right-based approach so that they can help everyone. So that's all about me. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Isha, for bringing the voices of the youth into this fora. Usually it's something that it has been grabbed by elder people, and we need the diversity. And that comes back also to what Stephanie was saying. We do value biodiversity, but we do not necessarily value the diversity of our cultures and what they bring into it. So now I have the honor to ask Aurélie, how are human rights reflected in the technical guide jointly produced by FAO and UNCCD on mainstreaming the VGGT principles into the implementation of the UNCCD?
Gracias. Bonsoir à tous. It's a pleasure to be with the panelists, and it was great to listen to you already. So happy to come into this. So first, the technical guide, its foundation are the VGGT. Today, there's been an interesting presentation also to show the VGGT. There are a consensus on best practices on how to address tenure. Yet, if we dig further, we discover that they are also rooted on human right-based texts that already exist. So the technical guide incorporates them, but what the technical guide does is that the VGGT are at the level of principles, and for instance, they have. It's interesting to reread the principle, the guiding principle of the VGGT. It's paragraph 3, that concern how to implement the VGGT. That already give a lot of guidance and show the integration of human rights by various means that I will come to that after. And also the general principle that highlight the notion of legitimate tenure right. I will come back. So the VGGT at a principle level, and what the technical guide has tried is to bring that to operational level. So how to make this human right-based approach that are in the VGGT operationable into when one formulate LDN initiative, so to tackle land degradation. So first, the technical guide builds on 3 main key considerations that articulated are meant to help to bring those human rights-based approach within the integration of the VGGT into LDN initiative. And one first is about legitimate tenure right. A key concept in the VGGT and it's interesting because this has been negotiated by the country and endorsed by the country, so it's their decision is the legitimate tenure right concept. This means that it's not only the rights that are already in legal frameworks, but also those that are socially recognized but may not be written, in particular, all customary right or collective right to land, and so on. The VGGT contains specific text. I'm not going to read it right now. But this is an important first concept, and to bring into the idea that this legitimate tenure right needs to be recognized, document, and that was a point that, for instance, Mr. the representative of Maroc, you bring forward that I will come after it comes to the point of the land administration that help modernize the land administration to help to document those legitimate tenure rights, and in the future hoping to diminish a part of the conflictivity around that, and to safeguard them, in particular when there are conflicting and competing interests on the ground, or also actors with asymmetry of power, for instance, maybe companies or bigger actors and others that have more difficulty to have their rights recorded. Second key consideration is the notion of consultation and participation. So within the VGGT, what we find is the notion of FPIC, the free and prior informed consent. But the VGGT goes a bit beyond. They actually invite that all relevant stakeholders, all the stakeholders, be part of the processes around governance of tenure. For this, you have one specific guideline that looks particularly at the notion of multi-stakeholder platform for any type of discussion around governance of tenure, in particular when comes the revision of policy and legal framework. A third key consideration is about because I see that I'm taking time, so I may not go beyond, but for this consultation and participation, it's also in that, for instance, in the technical guide, one operational way is also about having grievance and dispute resolution mechanisms that are key, particularly as LDN initiative may change the value of land as it aims to improve it, and that can trigger rediscussion around rights, and potentially those who have the less bargain power may come to see their rights challenged. So it's important to have a system that allows for claim, for grievance to be put forward, and to have dispute resolution mechanism alternative, particularly for not collapsing judicial system. There are various possibilities to do alternative dispute resolution mechanism. So the third key consideration is also about having a gender responsive approach. And this comes with to acknowledge when there are differences between men and women, and the technical guide in particular as a set of possible action to engage both men and women into improving the situation of gender equality towards rights, whether it is in the legal framework, whether it is with raising awareness within communities, and so on and so forth. I am not sure how I am about time. Okay, I am about time. So I will stop there, just saying that further operationalization of the human rights can be seen into the whole, the multi-pathway approach that we have developed, and each pathways. And I would like just to come back to the opening remark that yes, it is important to look into how also this can be built into the modernization of the land administration, and the modernization of the land administration that actually fit the financial and human resources of the countries, so that it really works. And also it is important to see it in the processes that will allow to renew, to update the policies and legal framework around governance of tenure and land tenure. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Aurélie, for an excellent presentation, and I would really like to see the impact of the implementation of such guidance that you're being provided, and see how things are going to evolve on the ground with its application. So now we have the presentation of Dijaktubi Ashiaka. In relation that, how does desertification, land degradation, and drought affect the enjoyment of human rights, and what is the civil society perspective on this?
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here and share this panel with you. As civil society organizations, we work a lot on the ground, and we see how human rights issues really this relationship between human rights and desertification and land degradation and drought. I just want to give some example of rights. Usually we see being impacted by desertification. If we take, for example, the right to access and own land, the gender rights, if you take right of access of government services, including health, water, education, protection services, we take the right also to food. Here I want to mention nutritious, culturally appropriate, safe and adequate food, right to peaceful family life, right to a safe and sustainable environment, right to housing, and if you take all these rights, for example, just a few I just mentioned, when desertification and land degradation occur, these rights are affected in different ways. For example, if you I just want to take the sector of health. In our tradition in Africa, traditional medicine play important role. When desertification or the land degradation occur, resources used in traditional medicine disappear or become completely, they are not there, you see? So desertification and land degradation also promote emergence of new illness and new pathogens also. This can also affect the health of people. Desertification and land degradation cause a lot depletion of water resources, which can also affect health. So if we take all these health issues, all these economic, social, cultural rights, they are really impacted by desertification and land degradation and droughts. So just to say that the fundamental rights, if we say, for example, this example I just gave, these one are really, they have impact of enjoyment, on the enjoyment of fundamental rights, especially if you take Article 1 and Article 25 of Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In this one, I just want to take just this more simple example. If you take migration, because of desertification, land degradation and drought especially, if we have migration, the people who leave their families, because they are looking for a better place, a better area to stay, when they leave, their impact, they have impact on their own rights. They are marginalized. their rights, they lose their dignity and freedom. So it is a very big issue to see on the ground how these fundamental rights of human beings are really impacted by this desertification and land degradation and drought. If especially most of the panelists, they talk about gender rights. Gender rights is a serious issue in our community. I'm a young woman, and I'm from a traditional community. In my own tradition, as a woman, I don't have access to land. I don't have. My mother doesn't have. Myself, I don't have. It is the customary, traditional norms, this one who prevents women to enjoy land rights. Now, if I want land, I have to be married. And the man have the authority, the power, this power on the land. If my father died, I don't have inheritance. I cannot inherit land. So it is a serious problem we are talking about here. It is about human rights. It is about life. Especially land is for women, is a life. Especially in rural communities. So this, I just want to mention this, right, just to say that civil society organizations often drive initiatives at both national and grassroots levels, including awareness-raising efforts. We are doing it, but it's not enough. We are doing it a lot, but it's not enough. We denounce, we combat, we combat discrimination and unfair practice and norms of our society. We do that, but it's not enough. When I hear my sister from young view perspective, I was really touched because it's serious. If you want to build a better generation, future generation, is now, not tomorrow. So this panel is really, I was very happy to take part of this panel because sometimes we talk about many actions, but we forget about linkage between human rights and all environmental issues today. That's why it's very important in my work. I am doing many efforts to raise this awareness. So to advance a human rights-based approach to desertification and land degradation, we need to take concrete actions. This is important. Talk, yes, we can talk every day, all the hours, but without action, we cannot change anything. We cannot. So, what we need really, the fundamental one is awareness on responsible land governance for combating desertification, land rights, and drought among all stakeholders. Not only stakeholders, also among vulnerable populations. They also have to know what is going on, and then they can raise and claim their rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very moving presentation and for bringing reality to this table. Thank you very much, and also to reminding us that there's no gender equality without women gender rights to land. Now we're open for questions, doubts for any of the panelists, but also the panelists can ask among yourselves if you have any burning questions. So I have first here, can you say your name, please, and who are you directing the question?
Thanks a lot. First of all, I would like to apologize as I was a little bit late, but that doesn't prevent me from listening very carefully to what has been said. And I would like to thank all the panelists for a very fruitful intervention. But I would like to add something on, I guess, my sister from Togo. I don't know her name, but if I do remember, you say you are a journalist.
Yes.
Excuse me, what's your name?
My name is Jatube Aziaka.
Jatuf Aziaka.
Yeah,
Please call me.
Aziaka.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I'm Dr. Ukani Rachel Claire from Cameroon. Sure, in Africa in general, women don't have rights. But I would like to bring a slight difference on the land law, because when you say women don't have right on land, I would like to say so do men, because in Africa, as far as I know, the land doesn't belong to a person. It
Yeah.
belongs to the community. So women as men individually can own the land. It belongs to a community. But the fact is that maybe things have improved, because women really need this land for food, I mean for everything. But that doesn't mean that they are totally deprived from this right, because if we take things as such, I'm a lawyer by training, but I know much more about
Yeah.
about Cameroonian law, but I've made comparative law. So I would like to say that what you mentioned is, I don't like to say totally right, but it has to be known that this statement can also be true for men. Individually, men are not owning land. But the fact is that since we are in
Patriarchal
a
society.
patriarchal society, they tend to take control on everything. But actually, when you take a sound look, nobody, men or women, can claim in a community, in a family, to say, this is my land, because brothers and sisters, maybe much more brothers, because women are always at the backyard of things. They say, it's not for you only. So we have to be a little bit, having said that, I would raise the fact that in Cameroon now, women can own land. It is written on the law. So I myself am owner of, some plots of the land. I bought it. It's legal. If you want to buy land in Cameroon, whether women, you don't need to be married at all. You can be a widow, you can be a young lady, you can be married, you can be divorced or whatever. If you want to buy a land, you just fulfill all the conditions and you have it. So this is what I just
Thank you.
wanted
Thank you
to
very much.
mention. Thanks a lot.
But it does vary from culture to culture,
Yeah.
and it does varies from.
I just want to write if I can react
please.
on what she said. You are right. It depends. We cannot say generally is like that. The picture is like that everywhere. It depends on the communities. And I'm journalist and I work on these issues. I know at government level, official level, there is the law. The problem is in implementation in our countries. We have land tenure, they improve the governance law on land tenure in my country. When I was doing my intervention, I said we need an awareness, even among the community itself. At the country level, the law, all they are there, they are put to regulate, to find a solution. But the problem, most of the community are not aware of this mechanism.
Thank you. I don't know if Aureli, you want to comment. How do you balance, like, precisely some of the principles
Because
based on
customary law is
constitutionary law
different.
and
Yes.
access to land and control to land that is not necessarily given to certain members of the community.
C'est ça. Thank you. First, yes, I can retake the point from the colleague. There is a very nice publication by FAO called When the Law is Not Enough. And it was a project done in Mozambique where there was a very interesting and progressive legal framework, yet it was not known on the ground. And so there have been an entire project with paralegal officers that were helping actually to get the word outside, to get what was in the law outside, and to progress toward tenure security. So on that, I second that often there needs to be translator, there needs to be voicing of what are the legal framework and how to the ground, so that also the person knows them. And everywhere, recently I was talking to a neighbor in France and he was not knowing a certain disposition legal, so it's everywhere. One that say, another level is that also it can happen that the law look only at a part, the legal framework take only a part, that there are, for instance, many rights that are not the legitimate tenure right I was discussing that are not yet recognized. And there could be interest also to bring the knowledge of this notion of legitimate tenure right to the people, and to start looking into how they may be recognized into the legal system, and to make evolve the legal framework, both the legal framework, but also maybe the way to record into the future these legitimate tenure rights.
Thank you very much. I have a colleague and then another, so we have 3 questions. So way there, please, can you say your name?
Thank you very much. My name is Tabi Joda. I am a frontline restoration implementer, ambassador for the Great Green Wall Initiative. I guess most of you know the Great Green Wall Initiative. It's interesting, actually, the little conversation that was raised from over there, my 2 sisters, around the issue of land. I want to bring very vividly or quickly to drive something home, that most of the issues around framework or land issues in Africa are being looked at very superficially. Why? Because people look at land so much from the CT perspective, without a strong connection to where the critical mass of people who use land resources, like ecosystem services, reside. These are the people in the rural communities mostly. And now, the understanding is that people say generally that women don't have access to land. What is land? Is there any need to have access to a land that is not productive? Obviously no. So, people want to have land that is, or people go for land that is productive. For instance, in the Congo or in so many of those regions, caterpillars, who are the collectors of the caterpillars? Women. Who are the most collectors of crabs, periwinkles, shrimps in the riverine communities? They are the women. Who are the collectors of the termites, the locusts in the Sahel region? They are the women. What is that called? Access to land. Because land is not just the fixed location, but also the constituent resources that surrounding it or that comes from its, from land or land resources. So when we talk about access to land, we have to be holistic enough and perhaps also be realistic that it is not just about what the law says. And I want to stand very strongly or to side also a little with what my sister from Cameroon was saying, that women in most of their legal structures in Africa, which I have studied very deeply, have access to land. Now it is the differential kind of accesses that we should be talking about. Access to what kind of land, or what set of land, or what type of land, or what kind of land resources are you talking about the access to? So I agree very well that it's good to talk about land use, land degradation issues with a human rights-based perspective, but then human rights should presuppose the increased access to productive land. Not just land, because if you are thrown in the heart of the desert there, where you have even no tree growing, no grass, no vegetation, no locust, no termite, no caterpillars, then you are thrown to the abyss of human rights degradation, right? So I feel two are right, but perhaps a little not so right, in the sense that we have to look at the context where you're talking from, and I want to very quickly underline this, that all women in Africa, as stipulated by most of the frameworks, have right to land. But now let's increase their rights and access it to productive land wherever they are. Makes more sense. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take the three interventions and then ask the panelists.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening. My name is Yes. I'm head of programs at TMG Think Tank for Sustainability. We work with governments in implementing the decision COP26 COP14 on land degradation neutrality and the link to land tenure. I'm wondering whether I, with the now full female panel, should comment on women's land rights, because this is probably borderlining mansplaining. I think I would just wave one point, that in all contexts that I have worked, women are both under statutory and customary law marginalized and more vulnerable than men. And I leave it to the very capable woman on the panel to expand on this, but this is my impression. I actually wanted to comment on the topic of the session, advancing a human rights-based approach to desertification and land degradation. And I think for me, having had the pleasure of working with Aurélie on the technical guide and with the governments who are actually moving ahead, I sometimes have the feeling that a lot has happened since 2019 when the land tenure decision was adopted. At the same time, I think the way has only started. I think the contributions that we heard today are testament to this, that what is actually needed to actually implement something like the technical guide or the decision at the national, subnational and local level. And I think I would like to call on the participants. The negotiations on the follow-up decision are starting tomorrow, and I would really encourage each and everyone to really approach the delegates from their countries and raise awareness so that the ambition of the next decision is increased and we do not come into this downward spiral of a delegation once adopted being watered down. I think it's absolutely essential that we keep the pressure up and that the level of ambition is raised and not lowered. And that's why I'm very grateful, and then I conclude, Madam Chair, that OHCHR has organized this event, because I really think that the human rights system is a key lever to enhance accountability. And without accountability, I don't think that all our funny technical tools will actually make a change. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that intervention. And I had a colleague here next to us. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Michael Orangi. I work for Rainforest Alliance. It's a global NGO that is more of conservation, but also we do a lot of work around human rights. Actually, he has just preempted what I wanted to say, because basically, as an NGO and promoting most of the human rights and also gender aspects into the farming communities where we work. I mean, I hear the discussions across whether we are pro or not, but I think those are realities that are there on the ground. And sometimes when we also do like project implementations in land restorations and all that, I mean, you see a lot of inequalities in terms of right to access land. As much as even most of the colleagues are saying women have rights to access land, personally I've not seen it on the ground. Because of some of the projects which we implement, you even call for meetings, and I know there is just an example. There's one project we were supporting actually women to install biogas plants, and then we awarded through incorporation. You know, you bring even all the men, and even in one of the meetings where we even had men, and the wife was awarded to be installed a biogas plant. But when they went back home, the man said, I mean, I had your name being read. On whose land are you coming to install that biogas? On whose name is it going to be registered? So, you know, those things exist. But then I was also wondering, listening to the aspect that we have most of these action plans being, put in place. If you look at, for example, the climate change interventions, climate change actions plans, from the global level, the PPC, is this the global body that deals with climate change? Yes, and then, you know, you have all those plans, they have been incorporated into governments. Like in Kenya, we have even them incorporated even into county governments, you know, at the local level, even to the district level. I'm just wondering, what extent are we incorporating also these, you know, gender action plans into those kind of lower government levels? I mean, there's a lot even in national level and even in law. Like in Kenya, we have the 1/3 gender rule, but it's just there in paper. It has never been acted upon. So up to what extent are we incorporating these gender plans into, you know, actual implementation at government level, at sub-government levels, at county levels, and to those lower levels of leadership? Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'll give 1 minute to each one of our panelists to do some answers and closing to the questions. So we can start.
Okay, I'm the lucky one. I've jotted down the different elements coming up, and it's true that, of course, the issue of access and talk about access, owning, and use, of course, of the land for different uses, for different opportunities for women. It's true that, and I think that's something which was mentioned but needs to be perhaps clearly highlighted, it's very much context-based. It's very much dependent on the interests, on the geographies, on the quality of the land, etc. The point I'd like to bounce back on is this topic of how far can we go into implementing at the local level in the gender action plans. I'll talk from the position of that I know as a development agency, which is, so we have these projects in different countries at different levels, which address this issue also, as I mentioned early on, of trying to increase the awareness, providing capacities to both, and we call these the rights holders, so it's the farmers, it's the women, it's the peasants, it's the stakeholders we wish to address for them to claim their rights, but also to the governments for them to be able to give them. So it's making this balance between acting at the grassroots, as we say, so the local side of things, but also so that they have the capacity to ask for it. So the closer you are to the actual people and to the local setup, the better it is, of course, because the idea was then that they claim, and then the local can then upwards claim also, and then to provide the environment behind it. And we also being honest and being, how do you call this? Let's be realistic also. We do try to find the units of work which makes the most sense, but also where there's the most appetite, to make sure that we have some champions who can then pull forward either the neighboring communities or put pressure on their higher up governments or authorities. So I don't think there's any clear, straightforward answer from my side, but I was trying to provide some examples from what we do.
Thank you, Stephanie. Aurelie.
Gracias. But thank you for all, first the panelists and the audience. It was a great discussion. I agree that when we talk about access, we talk about access, and it needs to be well understood that is also behind access, use, the usus fructus abusus right that are actually behind, and it's the continuum of tenure right, the bundle of right that we are looking, and that the question of quality of the land that is accessed is absolutely crucial, because there is statistically women access to parcels that are smaller and of lesser quality. So we add that to the fact that then after land degradation initiative, for instance, if they are not land degradation neutrality initiative, if they are not gender responsiveness, may pass by women without having the adequate tool to support them technically, then we have a kind of a double burden on the same shoulder, which is of a lesser quality plus less technical assistance. So it's really important, and that's come also to your point. And I'm sorry, I will re-emphasize what you just said. Also, it's that to transform the plan into action at local level, yes, indeed, it needs to be in all the LDN initiative. It needs to become a way to proceed. But also for that, I would say that civil society that engage at local level are absolutely key, giving the tool for this right literacy, but giving also the tool for more communication at local level to engage both women and men around those issues are key, and we can see that decisions that have been taken into the legal framework can bring also that when they are translated into concrete action, first of raising awareness and dialogue at local level. And I would go back to this idea of the multi-stakeholder platform that are not only on national level for FAO when we consider it, but I think needs to be also at, like for instance, you were saying district or county level. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Dijaktube Asiaka.
Thank you. It's very nice. I thank you, the audience, and thank you for your comment and your input. Is so nice. When I'm talking about access to land, I'm talking about ownership. I'm talking about ownership. It's critical in our rural communities, and this one that is the fact. Yes, there is actions to improve the situation, to find the solution, but the tradition, the customary norms, or these, they still exist. And these, they are impacting the enjoyment of human rights. And we need to always, that's why I said we need action. Action, and it will be both women and men. And I like the example of my brother. Me, myself, I was in one project for evaluation to do a documentary. When we arrived, they called the men, it is for agricultural. Actually, it was with FAO in Lomé, in Togo. When we went, it is empowerment, financial empowerment of women, rural women. When we arrive, it is, farmers, the women of farmers. But when we arrive, we are surprised that the women are working in agricultural sector, but they don't have ownership. They cannot improve themselves if you don't have the power on it. And when we finished, the men came to us, this kind of project will come to spoil our culture and to destroy the behavior of our wives. So it is, myself, I experience it. So it is, we need actions. And this kind of talk, I think, is very nice, good, to exchange and to see how we can move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Isha.
I come from India, and in India, yes, by law, we have the rights to land as a woman, but the problem is, whatever I have listened, no one is right or no one is wrong, because they are speaking from our own perspective. So first of thing, I would like to say that first, the laws are different from every country to every country. It is dependent on social norms. Even though we have law, it's hard to implement on ground, because maybe the woman, like I come from a suburban area, so it's not an issue for me. But I have been working in a village area because I was agriculture student. I have talked to the woman. So even though they have the right to the land, but they can't raise their voice. Even though there is law, they don't have the power or their financial support to go to the government that I have the law, I have the right, and I want that. They don't have the voice because of the social norm. And the places where we have indigenous community, a lot of marginal people, a lot of rural community, it's very hard even though the law exists. So it's not about right or wrong, it's about implementation, and it's very right. When you go to the rural area and you say, I want to do this, the men will come forward and they will not even let you go inside the village area. So even though you have everything on paper, but it's very important to have everything on ground. And there where we need to work on, because law is there. Like as he was Mr. I don't remember your name, but he was also saying that, okay, yeah, women are working on the land, they have the productive approach on that, but like we are working, but we are not getting anything on written in terms of monetary, in terms of respect, because like in daily job or monetary job, maybe the woman has the access to daily wages. But at the end of the day, when they go back to home, the monetary wages is going to the men, not the woman. So that is the problem of all the rural community, all the indigenous community, and in the village, where it is important to have the implementation. So I think, like from my experience, the people who are in a better situation like me, who can easily access to the land because we have the law and I have a supportive family that, okay, it's fine, you can get the law, right of the land. But it's not the same thing for everyone. So there we need the difference.
Well, thank you very much. I think they deserve a round of applause, all of our panelists. And usually the moderator does a closing and a wrap-up, but I'm going to do it in a different way today. I want for you, the participants, and for the panelists as well, to tell me one thing you have learned today, or what are you going to commit coming out of this event. It's about action. It's about implementation. So there's no use for me repeating your wonderful words. But I would like to hear, not from everyone, whoever wants to express, what do I take out of this event, or what can I commit to do when I go back home? So the floor is open. Yes.
I think this is a wonderful discussion. My takeaway is, I think once I go back to Kenya, I want to go and ask the government, do they know about the existence of these action plans, I mean gender action plans global, and how have they been incorporated into the Kenyan government and the local counties? We have about 47 counties. I mean, what plans are there to incorporate all these into all those local level government or jurisdiction areas?
Thank you very much. I think you want to commit to something, or something you have learned today from this event?
Well, it's just to say that we might be exceptions, but the principles still need to be reinforced. We need to build capacity around those women, asking them to dare, and also fight on the government side to be more, how should I say, flexible. But what I know is that most of the decision we have been taken comes from court, because when women dare, the people are condemned, and then they can no more have so much power as earlier.
Thank you. Any other comments? Panelists, a takeaway from you from, okay, thank you.
Sorry, we came in late, so I only caught the last part, but what struck me from the last conversation is that there is the law, and then there's the culture, and I think that a lot of times, and then there's the context, and that it seems to me that even though in the cases where the law is on the side of the women or the men, there's an equal law, that a lot of the work that has to be done is on the cultural part and the norms at the local level. And so I would be interested in what approaches exist, successful approaches of doing that, maybe in the setting of in India. And maybe that's something to actually work from the other end of it, to not sort of push the governments on the law, but actually work with the communities to sensitize them to be accepting to the laws. Thanks.
Thank you very much. In the study that we just conducted for UNCCD, you can find very innovative ways to deal with cultural and social issues to really address these topics. As our panelists were saying, the law is not enough, or when the law is not enough. What was the name of the document?
When the law is not enough.
When the law is not enough. So, and then we will close with our colleague at the end of the table.
Thank you. Once again, my name is Tabi Joda. I want us to take this home, that land is not just the product of space. Land is so much about the different constituent or derivatives that accrues from land itself, so that we can help women to be ingenuitive, to be imaginative, to be innovative, so that they don't, whether culture or laws, or whether they don't depend on the old solutions to solve the new challenges that we are facing. Imagination is necessary, innovation is necessary, ingenuity is necessary. We can make strong case for women having access in a different way, disruptively, with these innovations. And I think that we should also not leave these conversations here in this room. Can we, as humans, humanity, connect beyond this room, so that the voices we are raising and the ideas we are raising could spread further across the globe and create a global knowledge system that aids the women's capacity to own or earn or access what you have been promoting or wanting them to have access to even more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the Office of the High Commissioner on Human Rights for this panel, but also to Therese, because sometimes this requires hours and hours of work, of contacts and panelists. So thank you, Therese. Thank you, everyone. And a big clap and around, and let's take this into the negotiation for that starts tomorrow. Thank you very much.
And thanks to you also. Merci beaucoup.